Good morning, everybody. It's Katherine. I hope everyone had a good night and you are ready to hear another story. This story is a little bit different from most, and it was written by me, Katherine. The name of the story is When Malts Became Bittersweet. There were many things that Natchez offered to excite the children and serve as a reward for an accomplishment. They were never expensive, and some were free, such as riding over the Charlie Bump on our way to and from home. I don't know why we dubbed it the Charlie Bump. It was a small hill that went up and over the railroad tracks. I don't think we ever went over it without all of us screaming, "Faster, Daddy, faster!" And he would always go a little faster, and our tummies would tickle as we came down on the other side. We'd laugh, and Daddy would honk the horn. There was an elderly man who was always sitting on his porch just as we came down the hill. He would wave and Daddy would honk. I think that gentleman waited every day just to see us girls laughing and waving. We also loved to go to Duncan Park. It was a wonderful park with swings that hung from tall metal bars, slides that went way, way up high, and a roundabout that you would hold on to and run until you could jump on it while it zoomed around. There were 300-year-old massive oak trees that we loved to climb. There was a building on the side of the park where children had lots of birthday parties. The park was always filled with kids and a great place to play. One of our favorite treats for children and adults alike was the Dairy Queen. They made the best malts and milkshakes I've ever had. We used to say when we grew up we would get a malt every single day just because we could. Penny Ann and I usually got vanilla ice cream cones dipped in chocolate when we went, but on special occasions we were allowed to get a malt. We always got chocolate. Our sister Helen would take us sometimes once she got her license, and Bobby and Eloise from next door would take us on occasion. We were always asking Mom and Daddy if we could go, and it just depended on the day and their mood. I'll never forget the day. I was about 7. I asked for a malt repeatedly, and that was just the wrong time. Mom and I had picked Daddy up from his office across from the courthouse. Daddy got in the car, and Mama told him we had to go by Nana's, my grandmother's, to pick up some custard cups she had made for us. Immediately, I started begging to go to the Dairy Queen. My sisters weren't with us that day, and I thought surely since it was just me, we could stop and I could get something. Nana lived right down the street from it, so it was perfect. Daddy told me to settle down and started telling Mom about his day. Franny, I had a very unusual and trying day. I was sitting in my office whittling and going over one of my court cases when my door flew open and this large man came roaring into my office. Levita had taken a break and wasn't there. His face was almost purple, and I could see he was in a rage. It took a minute before I could remember his case, but then it hit me. He was a fella that came before me after he had been arrested for tying his wife up, locking his small son in the bedroom, and literally trying to burn the house down. His son survived, but his wife was in the hospital for quite a while, and I sentenced him to Whitfield in the hopes that he could get some help. At this point, from the back seat came me. "Can we please go to the Dairy Queen?" Mama told me to hush. Daddy continued. I told him very calmly to have a seat. I continued to whittle, and he started yelling, "You took my wife and son away from me, and I'm going to make you pay." Once again from the back seat came my voice. "Mama, we're going to pass the Dairy Queen." At this point, Daddy turned around and in his deep voice ordered, "Katherine Carmichael Coleman, not one more word." I slumped down in the back seat and Daddy went on. Franny, I could see he was half out of his mind, and I watched as he pulled a pistol out of his coat and pointed it straight at me. I continued to whittle. He looked up at me and said, "So what do you have to say now, Judge?" Daddy said, and now I was listening. I looked him straight in the eye and calmly said, "Well, partner, you do have a gun, but you see this whittling knife? Before that bullet leaves its chamber, This knife will be in your chest. It's up to you." Daddy said the man looked at his knife, looked at Daddy, and burst into tears, dropping the gun. Apparently, he had just been released from Whitfield that day, and his wife and son had left Natchez, and of course the man blamed Daddy. Needless to say, Mama was very upset, and I felt terrible. I had gone on and on about what malt I wanted. When we got home, I ran to our bedroom crying, and I told Penny, "Daddy was almost killed today, and all I did was whine for a chocolate malt. And I knew Daddy could never ever love me again. I hated me." That night, when I crawled in bed and the lights were turned out, I rolled over and saw Daddy standing in the doorway. He came over to me as I started to cry, put his arms around me, and told me in his quiet voice that he knew I didn't understand what he was telling Mama in the car, that he wasn't upset with me, and to stop the tears. He would always love me. He walked over to the door, turned around, winked, and said, "Sleep well, sweetheart. On Saturday, we'll go get that malt." I marvel at Daddy's strength and courage and his kindness. He knew that man had suffered enough, paid dearly for his mistakes, and he did not press charges but got him the help he needed. To this day, I have never gotten a malt without thinking about that story. And the funny thing is, since that day, for whatever reason, but I think we all know what it is, those malts aren't quite as sweet.